Yeah. Analytics off the chain, other channels not the same. Jake and Kyle, you know the name. Headliner Nation, we running the game. I'm a headliner.
Yo, Headliner Nation, what is going on? Welcome back into the Fantasy Headliners. Kyle here to get us all set for Week 13. Man, it is crazy to say that. We're already into Week 13. The stretch run is here, the final month of the season. Playoffs for fantasy football leagues are going to be starting very, very soon as well. Some of them maybe as early as Week 14, it sounds like. So it is time to get our roster set. And if you need some help, some reinforcements, the waiver wire is going to be the best way to do it. Now, before I get into our first segment of the show, just a reminder, through midnight on November 30th, you can pre-order the Fantasy Headliners Draft Guide for almost 50% off. It's our Black Friday sale still going on through the 30th. The link is down below. Just go to our website, thefantasyheadliners.com, and you can pre-order the draft guide right now for some big time savings. So make sure you do that if you haven't done so already. But it's time to hop into the first segment of the show. They said, what? And we're going to be taking a look at some of the best comments on our videos from the past week. First and foremost, from D-Money, the 2 to 3 days after Thanksgiving. You got to hit those Hawaiian roll sandwiches with the leftover turkey soup. Touches the, listen, the Hawaiian rolls with the leftover turkey, that's why I'm fine with turkey on Thanksgiving. It's the leftovers I'm more excited about. And honestly, I think moving forward, I'm just going to start cooking Thanksgiving dinner the day before Thanksgiving so I can have Thanksgiving leftovers on Thanksgiving because those are the best part of Thanksgiving dinner. Moving on to the next comment, Dog's Breakfast. Mashed potatoes are amazing. Come on, listen, I may or may not have had a take on the live show this past week where I said mashed potatoes and gravy were overrated. And for all the things I've ever said on this channel, that is the thing that I probably got crucified for the most. People did not like that take. Kimchi75, you guys seem so smart. Do you travel internationally? What? Anyway, I don't even know what to say to that one. Christian Hagstrom, coming from a girl that doesn't know crap about football, you helped me dominate the fantasy season and gave me new appreciation for football. Thank you, Headliner Nation. We run in the game, Christian. Listen, this is what I absolutely love. And Christian's comment is amazing to see because we see these comments a lot here on this channel. Hey, I'm new to football. I don't really understand football. You guys have really helped me. We're a channel for the people. And we've said that over and over and over again, that the information that we want to provide, yeah, we want it to be deep diving. We want it to have the supreme analytics. We want to look at tape. We want to do all these things. But most importantly, we want to put everything in terms that everybody is going to understand because there is a place for everybody in fantasy football and watching football. So this is a great comment. Kristen, thank you so much for leaving that. Really appreciate it. Love seeing those comments. And then T-Whisper 21, in a sad land of fantasy advice, you guys are a beacon of light. Pulling at the heartstrings there. But ladies and gentlemen, it's time to hop into it. Don't forget, our waiver wire show is always presented by our friends over at Fantrax, one of the most customizable fantasy platforms that you can find today. So whenever you get ready to start a new fantasy league, make sure you check out Fantrax and utilize them if you're looking to get some pretty customizable options. It's really, really awesome over there. So let's kick it off with our running backs and talk about them first and who we might be adding this week. First up for the Detroit Lions is going to be Jamal Williams, just under 50% owned. The DeAndre Swift injury on Thanksgiving Day obviously went down. It sounds like it's not nearly as bad as we anticipated. I mean, we were thinking maybe weeks and weeks, maybe the rest of the season. He ended up missing the rest of the game, but it sounds like he could end up being back sooner than later. But if you own DeAndre Swift, we're adding Jamal Williams. If Jamal Williams is available in your league and you don't have a top waiver priority, he's probably going to be a guy that you can scoop up and hold on to just to give yourself a little bit more depth in case DeAndre Swift does end up missing time. Alexander Mattison at 33% owned. We're going to have to add him up. He's priority ad number 1 this week, especially for Dalvin Cook owners. Dalvin Cook ended up being carted off the field in his game on Sunday. We have not heard anything. As of this recording, I have not heard what the injury is, any expected missing time. So as of this recording, we are priority adding Alexander Mattison right away, especially for Dalvin Cook owners if Cook were to miss time. Now, it could be after I release this video, we hear, oh, Cook's going to actually be okay. He'll be fine. I don't know that, but they've got a matchup next week against the Detroit Lions. For some reason, if Dalvin Cook is even banged up a little bit, it makes no sense to play him. Rest him against an easy win against the Lions and get Alexander Mattison in there and just let him roll next week. Matt Breida from Buffalo at 5.6% owned. They're going to have a tough matchup with New England this coming week. He didn't look great this last week, and if you look at the stats, it looks like Devin Singletary just had a better game. But honestly, at the end of the game, when it was a blowout, they chose to give Devin Singletary the most touches, not Matt Breida. And to me, that signals that they're still wanting to keep Breida healthy for this stretch run and that they did not see any need to utilize him when they were up by a lot. They utilized Singletary as well. And by the way, Zach Moss, a healthy scratch, and we'll talk about him more in a few minutes. Tevin Coleman from the New York Jets at 23% owned. This probably isn't going to help you much. I mentioned it on the live show. I mentioned it last week. A lot of people were asking about Ty Johnson. I was pivoting to Tevin Coleman. Tevin Coleman to me was the guy. He was the lead back to start the year. He ended up getting hurt. It allowed Michael Carter to really flourish. Now Michael Carter's hurt. They're going back to Tevin Coleman now that he is healthy. So for Tevin Coleman, he is the lead back here for me right now. He did have 67 yards on 16 carries. If for some reason he scores a touchdown against Philadelphia, he probably ended up being a fantasy start for you. Now, am I anticipating that? No, and I'm not banking on it either, but I'm adding him if I need depth, especially if I was a Michael Carter owner. David Johnson and Rex Burkhead from Houston. I mean, I'd rather add Tevin Coleman than either of these guys right now. They're going to be going up against Indianapolis. I mean, neither of them are going to be a good pick at this point, right? I mean, we're not banking on either of these guys helping you out. And they were basically split in statistics. I mean, David Johnson had 39 yards on 10 carries. He had 3 targets. Rex Burkhead, he had 27 yards on 12 carries. And he had 3 targets as well. So basically very comparable stats there. David Johnson, Rex Burkhead. I mean, it seems like Rex Burkhead still might be a little bit, just a smidge ahead of David Johnson, but there's really no rhyme or reason for what they're doing there with that backfield. So it's hard to tell right now. Ronald Jones from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I mean, Leonard Fournette owners, I would add him right now because I think as we get further and further down the stretch, we might start to see a little bit more Ronald Jones just to kind of help spell Leonard Fournette a little bit. Don't want to have any injuries heading into the playoffs. They want to have their lead back ready to go. That's going to be a big part of their game in the playoffs. So they're not just relying on Tom Brady to really go in and try to win those games himself. Give him that help he needs on the ground. And Ronald Jones is getting some touches at the goal line right now, scoring touchdowns in each of the last couple of weeks. So for me, Ronald Jones, he's not going to be a start, but for me right now, he's a depth add, especially if something happens to Leonard Fournette down the stretch. Donta Foreman and Dontrell Hilliard. Now, both of these guys are going to be going into the bye, so maybe they won't be priority ads for you right now. If I had to choose one of these two to be my priority ad, if you want to pick up somebody from Tennessee, it's still going to be Donta Foreman right now. He is going to continue to be the starter. I do believe Hilliard is probably going to have a little bit more upside, though. I think on a weekly basis, you're going to see Hilliard with less touches than Foreman, but you might see some games where he has more yards. The efficiency is just going to be there for him. But Foreman, for me, is going to be the starter and the guy that is going to get more touches. So if you're wanting a safety blanket, Foreman is probably going to end up being that guy. Now, are you running to add him this week? Probably not. But good news, for those of you that are further back in the waiver priority, or maybe you have less fab money to spend or whatever it is, because they are going into a bye, people in your league that are needing players right away probably are not going to be spending a waiver pick on these guys, which is going to give you an opportunity to sneak in and grab one of them towards the end of your waiver priorities, which will be really, really nice for those of you that need to add somebody, but you don't have a top priority this week. We've got 4 teams on a bye this week again, so there are going to be players that are going to be missing, and people, and I mean, everybody in the league was freaking questionable last week, so there are going to be teams that are going, or there are going to be fantasy owners that are going to be trying to add guys that can help right away. Alex Collins from Seattle. Now, Seattle, they play on Monday night. This is recorded before that game. No idea what's going to happen, but I can still tell you that it makes no sense to me that Alex Collins is less than 50% owned right now. There's no Travis Homer, okay? There's no Chris Carson. There's no Rashad Penny this week. Why are we not owning Alex Collins? Are you really that scared of DJ Dallas? Collins has been the guy for weeks now. Give me Alex Collins for the time being. If you want to take a dart and throw it at DJ Dallas, feel more than welcome to, but I don't think DJ Dallas is taking over as the lead back. It's Alex Collins for me. And then throwing in Boston Scott here at the end of the running backs at 17% owned. He led the team with 15 carries this past week, which was a few more, 6 more actually, than Miles Sanders. Miles Sanders may have tweaked something. Now, I have not heard for sure. I did see a couple of tweets saying he may have tweaked something. Didn't really end up seeing a whole lot, but it was odd to me that Boston Scott had 3 targets to Sanders 1 and had 6 more carries than Sanders. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So again, there may have been something that just hasn't come out yet. By the time this video drops, maybe something was mentioned on Miles Sanders. But as of right now, it sounds like he may or may not have tweaked something. Keep an eye on Boston Scott, especially for you owners out there. And just remember too, Jordan Howard, maybe he ends up coming back at some point in time this season as well. For the wide receiver position, we're going to kick it off this week with Josh Reynolds from the Detroit Lions at 0.3% owned. I mean, nobody at the wide receiver position in Detroit has separated themselves at this point. But I do know with Josh Reynolds, he's coming off a pretty good game, and he's got history with Jared Goff. These two played together in LA for a while, and I think that's going to help kind of build a little bit of that chemistry there. So if I had to make a guess, down the stretch, Josh Reynolds would be my guy that separates himself in the wide receiver room for the Detroit Lions. Cedric Wilson from Dallas. Now, Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb are both expected back this week, so Cedric Wilson isn't really a guy that I'm running out to add, but if for any reason we hear anything about another guy missing any sort of time, or maybe they can't make it back, whatever it may be, Cedric Wilson is definitely going to be a guy that will then go ahead and add at that point. I mean, he led the team in targets with 10 last week, caught 7 of them for 104 yards. A couple of options this week from the Las Vegas Raiders, Deshaun Jackson, Zay Jones. Both of these guys, Deshaun Jackson being over Zay Jones right now, but we know Darren Waller ended up coming away last week with a little bit of a knee injury. Now, it doesn't appear to be significant, thankfully, but it could still require him to miss some time or be limited. So right now for Vegas, Deshaun Jackson is my number 1 add for that team. 104 yards on 3 catches last week and scored the touchdown. He's the deep threat that this team needs. And I think that Derek Carr is going to continue to go to him moving forward. Now, he's going to have some up and down weeks, but there's going to be some boom potential there as well. Now, for Zay Jones, he led the team with 7 targets. And I don't think he's normally going to have those weeks. But again, it kind of depends on Darren Waller. If Darren Waller were to be out and miss this coming week, Zay Jones is a guy that's a little bit more interesting to me than moving forward. From New Orleans, a couple of opportunities here as well. Ty Montgomery. Been a while since you've heard that name, and Traquan Smith. Now, Ty Montgomery is an interesting one to keep an eye on because of Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara banged up right now. When are those guys going to be back? This past week, right? Everybody, Troy Jones. We're hopping on the Troy Jones bandwagon. We're wanting to get him started. It ended up being Ty Montgomery, though, that was kind of the not talked about usaged running back. I'm making up words now. I'm trying to think about what I want to say here. I mean, he was the guy that nobody's really talking about that didn't really make an impact, but kind of did. I mean, if that makes sense to you. But he ended up having 7 targets out of the backfield, and he caught 5 of them for 31 yards. And Tony Jones Jr. was not looking good, okay? So Ty Montgomery started to see more snaps out of the backfield. Again, remember, Ty Montgomery is a guy who started his career as a wide receiver out in Green Bay. And then he moved to running back, and he played running back a little bit, and he wasn't that bad of a running back either. He actually played pretty well. And then Green Bay, they drafted Aaron Jones, they drafted Jamal Williams, didn't end up using Ty Montgomery anymore. He kind of went to the wayside. He's been a couple of different places since then, but he's kind of a guy who is utilized in both areas. Now, he is listed as a wide receiver on most fantasy sites, but the majority of his snaps this past week came at running back. Basically, he made the Cordero Patterson position cool before Cordero Patterson became cool. That is what Ty Montgomery used to be in this league. Is he used to be kind of that guy? He's like, oh, he's a wide receiver, but he's getting most of his snaps at running back, and that's what it is. So keep an eye on it. If Kamara and Ingram have to miss more time, I think Ty Montgomery this week going up against Dallas, we could see him quite a bit. For deeper leagues, it could end up being worth an ad. We'll keep an eye on it. And then Traquan Smith, he continues to lead the wide receiver room right now. I mean, it was a tough matchup this last week, and we talked about that. But Dallas is going to be a little bit easier for him, and he's going to be working out of the slot against Jordan Lewis. Jordan Lewis burned up a few times this past week. I could see Traquan Smith having a pretty productive fantasy day coming up. Russell Gage for Atlanta, he finally showed up. 8 targets, 4 receptions, 53 yards, and a touchdown. And even with Cordero Patterson being back, Russell Gage still saw 8 targets. That's really, really good for me to see that as we move forward the rest of the season, especially with the matchup coming up against Tampa Bay. Laviska Shenault from Jacksonville, he is under 46% owned now, or he's under 50% owned, coming in at 46% owned, and he did lead the targets last week, a team in targets last week, 9 targets, but he only caught 5 for 3 yards. He continues to do very little with very, not little, much S. Yeah. It's just, to me, I don't understand Jacksonville at all, and I'm getting ready to go off on a huge tangent here. So just out of nowhere, we're going to give Laquan Treadwell a bunch of work this past week. I mean, DJ Chark goes down, so it's like, oh, Marvin Jones Jr., Laviska Shenault, those are going to be the guys. And then Jamal Agnew goes down, and then all of a sudden now we're looking at, Laquan Treadwell, who hasn't been able to hang on anywhere ever in his entire career. Okay. We're just going to move on from Jacksonville now. Nick Westbrook-Kind from Tennessee. He again, going into the bye this week, not going to be a priority ad for many people, but there's no Julio, no A.J. Brown for the next few weeks, so someone's going to have to be their wide receiver one. He was the guy, caught a touchdown pass last week. Probably not starting him right away, but somebody to add. Kendrick Bourne from New England, 15% owned. I mean, more people are owning Myers at this point, but Kendrick Bourne is the guy that is outproducing him. I mean, it's a tough matchup. We're not going to be starting him this week against Buffalo, but we will keep him because Mac Jones is really growing and getting better and better and better every single week, and it's making Kendrick Bourne, he's coming off a 2-touchdown performance. MVS, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. I mean, he caught 4 targets for 50, or he caught 4 passes for 50 yards, and that's great. I mean, it wasn't a fantasy breaking day. In half PPR leagues, he got you 7 points. In full PPR league, he got you 9 points. But he saw 9 targets, which was tied with Devontae Adams. It is clear that Aaron Rodgers is going to continue to push the ball to MVS. MVS is the number 2 target on this team. Even if Randall Cobb had a better week, even if we still see Allen Lazard getting some red zone touches, MVS is a guy that has high upside every single week right now. Van Jefferson from the LA Rams, somehow or another, over the past week, he slipped under 50%. And I get it. We needed to see what happened with OBJ. But if this is a team that is really, truly going to be in some games where they just don't put teams away, especially against the better teams like Green Bay, Van Jefferson is a guy that we need to start locking in as a start every single week. Now, going up against Jacksonville this coming week, not really that excited about them because that's a game that they could run away pretty easily with. But Van Jefferson, if you're looking for a wide receiver 3 in deeper leagues, as long as you're willing to deal with a poor performance, if it happens, the upside is going to be there. Juwan Jennings from San Francisco, not sure of the severity of the Deebo Samuel injury, okay? He ended up getting hurt. He's going to be going for an MRI on Monday. This video will be out probably before we hear anything on it. So not sure about that, but Jennings would be the wide receiver 2 on this team if Deebo ends up missing time. Last week, he caught 2 of his 3 targets for 24 yards and a touchdown. Curtis Samuel, he's going to be back this week. Again, he should be back for Monday night, activated, ready to go. I don't know, though. This video is recorded before then. Could have an awful week. Could have a great week. He's only 24% owned, though. Coming back, should be activated for Monday Night Football. This could be a guy that could help a lot of teams down the stretch. Not many tight ends to talk about this week. We do have a few. Cole Kmet at 13% owned. He led the team with 11 targets last week, which was great to see because with Andy Dalton coming back, who didn't even look at tight ends to begin the season. It was really, really good to see that type of chemistry there that Justin Fields has built that really kind of has carried over in the game plan, even with Andy Dalton, who might be the starter moving forward for right now. Caught 8 of his 11 targets for 65 yards. Foster Moreau from Las Vegas, again, depends on what happens with Waller. If Waller ends up missing time, for those of you that are Waller owners, we're adding him right away. Nick Vannett from New Orleans, not really adding him right now, but Adam Troutman, I mean, everybody in the tight end room seems to be getting hurt this season. Vannett was the main guy this past week. Brevin Jordan from Houston, I mentioned him a few weeks ago when he came back and started playing. He's a guy that has seen a few more routes run over the last few weeks. His snaps are kind of staying about the same right now, but he's getting a few more routes here and there. He scores another touchdown this past week. Keep an eye on it. Deeper leagues could be a stash. And Logan Thomas just barely falling under 50% owned, so we're going to throw him in here. He's going to be back this week, going to be on a snap count, but he is a great guy to add right now. Now, moving over to the streaming portion of our video, going to talk about some quarterbacks and some defenses that we can stream this week. Carson Wentz at Indianapolis going up against Houston is going to probably be the mainstream this week. The ceiling could be limited. Lots of Jonathan Taylor coming up against Houston, but still a really good matchup for Carson Wentz. Taylor Heineke, 21% owned, going up against Las Vegas. Now, Las Vegas can create pressure, but Heineke is really good at getting out of the pocket, moving around. He's mobile. He can make guys miss. That bodes well for him to still have a pretty decent fantasy day. And Jimmy Garoppolo for San Francisco, going up against Seattle. He's not been stellar. He's been okay, pretty good recently, but he's not going to lose you a fantasy matchup either. So if you need to stream a quarterback this week, Carson Wentz is probably going to be the safest option, but not that high of a ceiling. Jimmy Garoppolo probably going to be the second safest option and going to have a higher ceiling just because it's Seattle, maybe a little bit of back and forth, and they have to throw it a little bit more. For the defensive side of the ball, Miami is going to be my first streaming option this week. They are going to get a pretty easy matchup. I mean, here's the thing. Miami and Philadelphia, both of these teams are guys that I'm looking at for high upside due to turnovers, okay? So even like Miami against the New York Giants, if for some reason the Giants put up a few points, understandable, but it's turnovers with Danny Dimes in that offense, or Danny Pennies. For Philadelphia, maybe they give up a few points, but it's about the turnovers, all right? And that's why Miami and Philadelphia are the first two teams up here against the Giants and the Jets, because of the turnover potential. Any turnovers they get, sacks that they get, could offset any type of points that they give up. And for Minnesota, I mean, that's the easiest smash start that I've ever heard in the history of defensive streaming options, because it's the Detroit Lions who are just no good. So because of that, Minnesota, 14% owned, going to be available in a lot of leagues. Definitely can stream the heck out of them this week. Talking about a few players that we could potentially drop this week. Emmanuel Sanders, just under 70% owned. He hasn't done anything in weeks. It's really right now Stephon Diggs, and then it's Dawson Knox, and then it's Cole Beasley. Even Gabriel Davis is getting a little bit more work right now. Emmanuel Sanders slowly trickling down the hierarchy of Buffalo wide receivers. Speaking of Buffalo players, Zach Moss. If you still own Zach Moss, you either haven't been paying attention in weeks, or you are a truther and you have a sickness, okay? Because Zach Moss, like we've said, for over a year now, is really not that good. And ladies and gentlemen, him being a healthy scratch for Matt Breida and Devin Singletary, that should speak volume to you. Noah Fant from Denver at 80% owned. I've mentioned him here for a couple of weeks. He had a really, really good matchup this past week and did absolutely nothing. Him and Albert, are you okay? They're splitting snaps. They're splitting targets. They're getting utilized the same. They're doing two tight end sets. You've got Jerry Jeudy, Tim Patrick, Cortland Sutton. You've got Javonte Williams. You've got Melvin Gordon, okay? Noah Fant just is not seeing the type of volume you need right now out of a tight end. There are a lot of guys that I'd rather go with right now. Darrell Williams from KC. I mean, CEH is the lead back. This guy is still over 66% owned right now. I'm moving on from Darrell Williams unless you're a CEH owner. If you're a CEH owner, then I'm keeping Darrell Williams on my roster in case something happens to CEH. Kenny Galladay at 61%. I mean, the dude can't even get 10 points, and everybody on the team is freaking hurt. Saquon Barkley isn't getting the same amount of pull that he did at one point in time. Kadarius Toney is out. Sterling Shepard is out. I mean, Darius Slayton sees a And Kenny Golladay still isn't doing anything. I've moved on from Kenny Golladay for the season. Devontae Smith at 88% owned. Now, I'm not telling you to drop him right now, but I am telling you maybe it's best to kind of leave him to the side, okay? He's got some better matchups coming up. But Jalen Hurts, this is not a knock on Devontae Smith. I don't think Devontae Smith's inconsistencies this year are anything to do with actual Devontae Smith. I think it has to do with Jalen Hurts. He's super inconsistent. And even on Twitter the other day, I posed the question, why is it that Lamar Jackson, over his first few years here in the league, has been absolutely crucified over and over and over again about not being a great passer, but no one cares really about the rushing because he can't pass, calling him a running back? Nobody's doing that with Jalen Hurts. And Jalen Hurts is more inconsistent of a passer right now than what Lamar Jackson has been. The only reason Jalen Hurts is even a decent fantasy start for you on a weekly basis is because of his rushing ability. That's it. If that wasn't there, this dude is a bottom tier NFL quarterback, okay? Devontae Smith being directly tied to him is leading to some really bad weeks and some awful inconsistencies. So is Devonta Smith a drop for me right this minute? No, but he's working his way there if Jalen Hurts and this offense cannot get moving in the correct direction. And then Tyler Higbee, 72% owned. A lot of Tyler Higbee truthers out there. We continue to have a little bit of back and forth on him. He is still not a guy that I'm trusting right now, especially with OBJ starting to get worked in a little bit more. Tyler Higbee just has not looked good for a majority of the season. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. The Week 13 waiver wire video is done, recorded, out the books. Get your waiver wire set. Hopefully Monday Night Football goes well. Obviously, if there's any changes to any of the information, because this is coming out on Monday, we'll try to update it down below with a pinned comment. But do me a favor, hit the like button, subscribe if you're new here to the Fantasy Headliners, and leave a comment down below and let me know which one of these players will be your priority ad for the week. But I'm going to get out of here now. Everybody stay safe and stay healthy, and I'll catch you on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.